Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 of All the Metal Podcast. We're going to be continuing our genre of the week discussion. This week we are discussing thrash metal. I'm going to be giving Greg a call in just a little bit, but first I'm going to do my usual intro, okay? Thrash metal, or simply thrash, is an extreme subgenre of heavy metal music characterized by its overall aggression and often fast tempo. The songs usually use fast percussive beats and low-register guitar riffs, overlaid with shredding-style lead guitar work. The lyrical subject matter often deals with criticisms of the establishment and concern over the destruction of the environment, and at times shares a disdain for Christian dogma resembling that of their black metal counterparts. The language is typically quite direct, and an approach borrowed from hardcore punk. Okay, so that's enough from me, and I'm going to be giving Greg a call. And I'm just going to forewarn you guys, this is going to be a pretty long episode. Stay with us.
Hello there.
Well, hello there, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How about yourself this evening?
I'm doing quite well. So, we're doing thrash metal this week.
Indeed we are.
Well, I should forewarn you, as I just forewarned the audience, I've got a hefty boy for you.
Cool.
Okay. Alright, cool. On average, how often do you consciously write riffs using chromatic scales?
Consciously? Never. I don't really think about stuff like that.
No?
When I write riffs. I don't even know how to process stuff like that. It's too close to theory, and I know nothing about theory.
Okay. Alright. Cool. Which do you prefer in thrash? Two bass drums or double bass pedals?
Well, I mean...
Or does it all depend?
In the studio, it never matters, but, live, you want to see those two bass drums.
Yep. Which do you prefer in thrash? Bass players who use a pick or bassists who use their fingers?
It really depends. It depends. It really depends on the style of thrash band and, the kind of, I guess, the kind of bass player that's playing, I suppose. Whatever.
Yep.
Yep. It really depends. It's very much user-defined.
Yeah, the player and the song, right.
Yeah.
How much credit does Greg give Stone Cold Crazy by Queen for inspiring early thrash metal?
It's tough to say. I don't know that I would, because that was in a period of time where obviously the style as it would become wasn't really anywhere near.
Right, it didn't exist. It didn't exist.
I wouldn't give it any more credit than I would, anything by, Deep Purple or even some of the Sabbath stuff at that point, because, if Stone Cold Crazy was, there's fast stuff in like Fireball by Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would probably have to say Fireball by Deep Purple, Stone Cold Crazy, any song like that of that era from those kind of bands are probably like the, without getting into like the nuance of, well, technically it was invented by, in polka, I guess, but,
Right.
I would say Stone Cold Crazy is no more important than a song like Fireball by
Deep Purple, talking about, the earliest inspirations.
Songs by bands of that era.
Right. And the same question pertaining to Symptoms of the Universe by Black Sabbath.
That's, I guess that would be...
Is that the exception?
That's later on. That's like 77, 78.
Right.
At that point, I think that not so much that song as it was maybe some of the stuff that was coming up, because by 77 or 78, you know, stuff like, you know, Sin After Sin by Judas Priest was already out, and Stained Class, and those already had, you know, double bass songs in it. And so I would think that by that point, you know, maybe like the chunkiness symptom of the universe, you know, certainly that left a mark on someone like James Hetfield, but
yeah, sure.
I think by that point, the wheels were already turning closer to what thrash is going to become, because bands were already starting to pick up that tempo with extra double bass in songs. Again, songs like Exciter by Judas Priest.
Yep.
You know, Motorhead was starting to get into the mix at that point, the song Overkill.
Yep.
So double bass was starting to creep in, tempos were creeping up, you know, so...
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely include it as one of those songs. You know, Sabbath is just one of those bands in general that's...
influenced a lot of subgenres,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Same question with Diamond Head's Am I Evil? You mentioned Diamond Head last episode.
Well, I mean, the song Am I Evil is really... It's clearly it's become a song that's synonymous with the biggest band of all time. Biggest metal band of all time. And, you know, by nature of that accolade, you know, they're also the biggest thrash band of all time, because at one point Metallica
was a thrash band.
And sometimes they still are, you know.
Right, yep.
Definitely some stuff
like on Hardwired, yeah.
Are thrash metal songs. So they still represent that style. So they're the biggest metal band of all time, they're the biggest thrash metal band of all time, too. So if Am I Evil, if Diamond Head as a whole influenced, you know, the biggest metal and thrash metal band of all time, well then, yeah, you can't...
Yep.
You can't deny them of that.
Yep.
You know, not so much. I mean, because that song is definitely more along the lines of like kind of like a chugging, you know, Sabbath kind of piece. It's got the like that's very you know, Iommi-ish.
Yes, it is.
It's got that sinister chugging riff. But you know, there's songs like Helpless, you know, which are more up tempo, you know, that are that had more to do with, I think, the you know, thrash. If thrash, you know, it's known for picking up the tempo in metal.
Right.
You know, and so while Diamond Head as a whole is important to Metallica and ultimately metal by that token as well, I think a song like Helpless might be more influential to the general tone that thrash would take on.
Sure. Name the first early thrash influenced song you can think of from each band. So I'll give you a list of bands. First song you can think of that like may have influenced early thrash. So Iron Maiden.
Alright, so just to make sure I understand. So the song by these, so you have a list of bands.
Yeah.
Name one song from the bands you're about to name that you think had an influence on thrash.
Yeah, or like what thrash evolved into. Maybe not the start of thrash, but just thrash as a whole. Like the first song that kind of jumps into your head. So
like, you said Iron Maiden. So
right.
The song, so you're saying like song or album?
Song or album.
That would have influenced thrash the most?
Yeah, if you could talk about an album, like that might be better than a song or album.
I think, I mean, obviously the first two, well, technically they had 3 records before thrash kind of became a thing, I guess, per se, but like, maybe even 4, depending on when Peace of Mind came out, but I would say the biggest influence on thrash is probably the first 2 records, maybe Killers more so, the second album, because it was a little more aggressive, produced a little heavier than the debut.
Yeah.
Specifically a song like Purgatory, which is basically, you know, that's an up-tempo song. It's a speed metal song for all intents and purposes. You know, it's like kind of proto-speed metal, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You know, so
proto-speed metal's good.
If I could pinpoint a record, I would say Killers. If I could pinpoint a song, I would say Purgatory.
Yeah. Venom.
Venom? Well, first
it's kind of redundant.
the first 2 records.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's really all that needs to be said. The first 2 records.
Yeah.
The first 2 Venom records are, I mean, the whole image was so over the top, and
yes. Yes.
But I would say if you want a specific song, I would say the song Black Metal, the title track.
Yep. Black Metal from Black Metal. Yeah. Yep.
It's weird because it's one of those records that it stylistically maybe has more to do with thrash, but it also was the creation of an entirely different genre.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's one of those weird focal point records that kind of means,
right. It kind of made metal skew off in two ways. Yeah.
Pinpoint the roots of death metal there too. So it's one of those albums, one of those bands, one of those eras that where you can kind of, everyone's got a stake in it. Everyone's got skin in that game.
Right. I think you already said it. Motorhead, but I think you already said the song Overkill. Yeah.
Overkill, yeah.
Tigers of Pan Tang.
Honestly, I'm not crazy into Tigers to Pan Tang. I think they're a cool band, but I don't own any of their records.
Right.
There's really nothing it's cool to listen to.
Yeah.
And it's just never anything I just investigated further. But they're a part of the new wave of British heavy metal scene, and that's...
Yes, correct.
Because they're a part of that, then they definitely have...
a little merit by default.
Yeah. But they were a good band. They had, John Sykes, who was in Thin Lizzy, and then Whitesnake later on.
Right.
He was in the band, and he's a tremendous guitarist, and he's definitely influential.
Raven.
Oh, Faster Than the Speed of Light. Off the Wiped Out album.
Right. And finally, Angel Witch.
Sweet Danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This next one, there are two bands that are like two obvious reasons I would ask you this one, but in your opinion, is Brian Slagel the unsung hero of thrash?
I wouldn't say he's any more. Well, no, I wouldn't say he's unsung. I mean, he's the president and founder of Metal
Right.
Records.
Right.
So he's definitely not unsung. And even as far as kind of having one of the first exclusively metal record labels. I mean, I wouldn't say he's any more important or pivotal than say Johnny Z, or Marsha Zazula of Megaforce Records or anything like that, or
right.
The guys who ran Noise Records or
Yeah.
Roadrunner even. I mean, there a bunch of labels kind of popped up
At around the same time, yeah.
At around the same time, but I would say that Slagel is definitely pivotal. I mean, I wouldn't say he's unsung at all, but
for Metallica and Slayer,
very important in the foundation of heavy metal in America.
Right.
Right. And obviously now kind of worldwide, but as far as metal's skin in the game or metal stake in it, he's huge. He's massive.
Yep. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess it's not a widely known name, especially with younger fans of metal. So I guess that question is more relevant to your younger fans that have
I think people our age. I mean, we know who he is.
Yeah, right.
Record labels were also a lot more important when we were younger.
Right. Yes.
A
lot of bands are doing it themselves now. Yeah.
There's a lot more physical product. Like if you're a kid and you're downloading something off of iTunes or you're streaming it on Spotify, you're not looking at the liner notes of a Slayer record like Hell Awaits and you see Brian Slagel's name all over it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Okay, so the 1982 split LP between the Void, and the Faith. Are you familiar? What are your thoughts, and how much credit do you give it for the inspiring of thrash?
Did you say Void and who?
Void and the Faith. It's a split LP from 1982.
I mean, I've never heard of the Faith, but I've heard of Void, and we're talking the hardcore band or the punk band, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's definitely influential because the velocity of that style of music kind of mixed with the technicality of metal is pivotal to this genre. I don't know. I mean, personally, I've never heard anyone reference that split specifically.
Right.
But Void was definitely a part of that, hardcore punk movement. So
yep.
I can definitely say that I'm sure they had an influence on a metalhead or two.
Yep. Yeah, that split LP is credited for I don't know. I've always just read that LP is like the most influential piece regarding thrash from the year 1982, but I'm not all that familiar myself, so I was just kind of like picking your brain about it.
No, but honestly, I am interested in that. I'll definitely check that out. I'm when it comes to like hardcore and punk and stuff like that pre-thrash era. The bands that really the metal dudes already kind of started picking up on the energy. Your DRI, your Minor Threat, faster, more aggressive stuff. That's a lot of the stuff that I'm into. Old Suicidal Tendencies, which ultimately they went on to be an actual thrash band.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. For sure.
Cool. Yeah, cool. But I'll probably check that out. I dig that era. So
cool. Discussing strictly the German scene. Talk about some of your favorite earliest works from Sodom, Creator, and Destruction.
Okay, well, Creator, for me, I think you really can't go wrong up to and including Coma of Souls. I think that they were, it's unfortunate, to use it as a frame of reference because they're totally not. It's totally different sound, totally different scene, totally different outlook, totally different bands. But it's really tough to compare. Just because obviously you want to be as descriptive as possible for these things, and I would assume that a vast majority of the people listening to this know who Creator is.
Yep.
But in the event that someone listening to this does not know who they are, Creator to me was the Metallica of German thrash.
Yep.
They were easily. They were the biggest. They had. They were just the biggest, and to me, they were the best. Now, granted, that being said, I don't think Metallica is the best thrash band, but I think in that scene, Creator was the best, and the first 5 albums and the Flag of Hate EP, that's classic German thrash. It's just classic thrash in general. Sodom, they were kind of like the Venomy, Motorheady, noisier little brothers of Creator. They sound nothing like Creator at all, which is great. That's part of the thing. That's one of the things that makes them unique and special. Really, about any of the bands that we're about to talk about with the German scene, they all sounded different. Just like the big American band.
Yep.
They all sounded different.
Yep.
Sodom, they started out really, really raw, and to the point, and just almost, in some points, I hate to use the word comically bad, but just just some really, really rough stuff. You can definitely tell that these guys got in over their heads at a really young age. But on the flip side of that, them getting thrown into the deep end before they could swim really caused them to evolve, I feel like, at a rather accelerated rate. If you look at the first EP in The Sign of Evil, which, some of the lyrics are hilariously inept in the English language.
Right, the broken English, yeah.
But if you look at that EP, which I think was 84, and then you look at, Persecution Mania, which was only 3 years later, they had a different guitarist by then, Frank Blackfire, easily one of the coolest names in the history of metal.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a little Sodom story too.
I would love to hear it. Everyone would love to hear it.
By the time they got to Persecution Mania, they had really become, they had really upped the beats per minute of the genre. Because, the velocity that, Chris Witch Hunter was playing at was and Venture with Creator as well too. They were playing at a tempo that was faster than really a lot of what was going on in America. Like Slayer was kind of like the fastest gun in town here for a while.
Sure.
But Sodom and Creator were playing definitely faster than
that. They upped the ante a bit for sure. Yeah.
Sodom and Creator, I think they had as much of an influence on what would become death metal as they did thrash metal, because the American bands, save for Slayer, the bigger bands, they were singing. Sodom had like that. Tom Angel Ripper had that gruff voice. Millie Creator kind of had like that raspy, shrieky voice. And Schmear from Destruction, kind of the same thing. So they were, I think, more aggressive than the American bands. But like I said, if you look at the debut EP from Sodom and then you get to Agent Orange, I mean, it's like day, and it's all evolved over the course of like maybe 4 or 5 years. So, Sodom, classic stuff.
Right.
Destruction. Honestly, I think out of because you wanted to know about Creator, Sodom, and Destruction, right?
Yep.
Destruction was my least favorite of the 3. I think they're a cool band, but I have
least memorable.
I think so. I mean, they've got some cool songs. The one edge that I think they had over the other bands, meaning Creator and Sodom, was that the guitarist Mike Zifringer, he was like great right out of the gate. Whereas the other band, they kind of learned, and you could tell they were learning. And the same thing goes with Mike from Destruction as well too. But he seemed to be more advanced right out of the gate. You listen to a song like Bestial Invasion. I mean, there's some cool stuff going on there that is definitely guitar-wise beyond what Millie and the early guitarists of Sodom were doing. Mm-hmm. But Destruction, they're a cool band, but they were never really something that I got into, beyond a record or two. I don't know why, because I definitely like some of that stuff, but it was just nothing that really inspired me to get deeper into it.
Maybe by the time you got to Destruction, you had already taken in enough similar music.
You know what? I don't think so. Because by the time I got to Destruction, I think I was 23 or 24 maybe.
Yep.
And, and at that point I was still kind of evolving as far as, like, going further and further back into the underground and stuff. And, I mean, I think I got into them. I definitely got into them. I think I got into them before I got into Sodom, actually. But Sodom to me just connected more so than Destruction did.
Right.
Yeah, there's just something about, like, I mean, the older Sodom stuff where it was, just really, really rough production and playing wise. I mean, there's a charm to it, but when you listen to like an album like Persecution Mania and, like, songs like Christ Passion and Nuclear Winter, and there's just super aggressive stuff, and you could totally tell that. I mean, it's so close to death metal.
Yep.
Like if Tom Warrior's vocals are a touch deeper, maybe a little more guttural, that's a death metal record.
Sure.
They're so close to that on that record.
Sure.
And Destruction, for whatever reason, just didn't. They were lacking that thing that pushed
that punch, right? Yeah. Which is a better band name, Leather Charm or Metallica?
Metallica. Oh, but before I forget, let me tell you my Sodom.
Yeah, please do.
It's really not I don't even know if it's a good story, but it's just something that made me laugh, or makes me laugh. It doesn't really exist anymore because I think they've largely gotten rid of the the electronic signature pads, at supermarkets and shit now. When you use a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
But for years, just because I feel like the classic Sodom lineup between 87 and 89, they had the coolest fucking pseudonym stage names like ever in metal. So for years, whenever I would have to sign my name, to pay for something, on a credit card or whatever, on the keypad, I would, not every time, but a vast majority of the time, I would either sign it Chris Witch Hunter, Frank Blackfire, or Tom Angel Ripper.
That's good. Yeah, that is a good story.
Yeah, it's kind of nerdy shit.
That no one would get. That no one would fucking get. It working at a store, right?
I used to get a kick out of it.
Yeah. You're entertaining yourself, but that's fine. That's what life is about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Overkill or Testament, and why?
That's a good question. Two classic bands that have, really, against all odds, have stood the test of time. I mean, those bands have never broken up.
Yep.
They've stayed. Well, actually, I think, in all seriousness, I think Testament actually broke up for like 1 month in 1996.
Yep.
And they changed their name. They got back together a month later, and they changed their name, and then they're like, no, what are we doing? So I think Testament was broken up for maybe a total of 2 months one time. And, they had a break when Chuck Billy was
What is that Testament song? What is that Testament song that everybody covers? Is it Into the Pit?
Into the Pit, probably.
Yeah. Everybody covers.
I know the Absence covered that. You probably heard them too,
yes,
right?
I've heard that one. There was another band that just did it recently. It just popped into my head. But anyway, back to Overkill and Testament.
Me personally, I would take Testament just because Testament is kind of they're kind of, which is weird because I don't even know if it's not even like they're a top 5 band for me, but maybe they are, considering how they influenced me into really other styles of music. Testament, their newer records, they're serviceable, they're not bad, they're good records, but I think they're kind of done blowing my balls off.
Right.
Same with Overkill.
Sure.
Overkill, I don't have all their records. I have a fucking lot of Overkill records.
Yeah.
But when a band is around for that long and puts out records as often as they do, eventually some are going to fall through the cracks just because, you're getting other things. And all their records that, I've heard from them or have, not all of them are must listen, in my opinion, But for me, you really can't go wrong from Overkill from probably 85 or 84 to 94. The first 10 years, I think, is probably where their best material is. But anyway, I digress. Testament, I feel like, was much better for a lot longer because they really evolved.
Yes.
If you listen to the first record, it's pretty heavy, it's pretty aggressive, but it's very much rooted in that Bay Area thrash sound. It very much was kind of like, I feel like, I remember reading a lot when I was growing up that a lot of people just kind of called them Metallica's little brothers. And I really think that was kind of really not totally accurate. I mean, yeah, they had that sound, they had that scooped guitar tone, but there was something different with them. Maybe some of the vocal stuff Chuck Billy was doing could be construed as Hetfield-ish at times, but he sounded nothing like James Hetfield.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
vocally, no.
They had that Bay Area Hetfield riffery.
Yep.
But they also had a lot more melody and melodicism in those intense riffs.
Sure.
They had a lot of harmonized guitar riffs, whereas Metallica had guitar harmonies. I feel like Testament had a much more melodic sense of riffing.
Yes.
Than than Metallica did. So they were, at a surface level, maybe the logo was a little bit Metallica. It's just, I think really aesthetically and maybe surface level, the Metallica, I don't want to say criticisms, but comparisons, they're not incorrect, but they're definitely misleading. And so ultimately, I think what Testament's strength was that they evolved. They went through that dark period. When the early '90s, when unless you were Megadeth or Metallica or Slayer or Pantera, you were kind of fucking dead in the water if you were a metal band.
Yep.
And
sure.
And when bands were trying to, and Testament is not an exception to this, they definitely tried to do their quote Black Album, because a lot of those bands did, and it was somewhat successful. I think it got them a gold record, but it definitely didn't make them as big as Metallica.
No.
But and in the end, it kind of, it wasn't maybe the right move. But the very next record was like crazy heavy compared.
Crazy,
to that. So
yeah.
After they have their attempt at a Black Album, they then just put the throttle down and hit the gas.
They said, "Fuck it."
They've become almost a death metal band.
Yeah.
Chuck Billy started doing entire songs in like a death metal vocal style, and then obviously later on, Eric Peterson got into black metal and he did Dragon Lord. So Testament to me is influentially almost beyond Thrash because they helped death metal make sense to me.
Sure.
They helped make black metal make sense to me. So it's kind of a long answer to the answer, but Testament I prefer.
That's a question that needs a long answer.
All the way.
Yeah. Right. What is your favorite Slayer album? Pick 3 if you must.
No, I can. I mean, I definitely have 3 Slayer records I love, but my most favorite is Rain and Blood.
Yep.
That was a pivotal point for me as far as like understanding more aggressive music.
Sure.
Coming from the school at that point of records by Metallica and I'm thinking at that point the heaviest stuff I probably listened to was Anthrax, the rest of the big 4.
Yep.
Testament.
Yep.
And some of Testament, I should say. I wasn't fully integrated with them yet, but Rain and Blood, I'd never heard anything like that before. It was the fastest thing I'd ever heard, and before you even realized what was going on, it was fucking over.
Yep.
The record is 26, 27 minutes long, and coming from a background with metal bands, and all their records are anywhere between 40 to
an hour,
60 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I'll never forget. I borrowed Rain and Blood from someone in my music class, and I remember listening to it in my Discman on the bus on the way home.
Yep.
And when the CD stopped,
you got to your house.
Before I got to my house, I thought my battery died.
Right.
On my Discman, and then I realized no, that's fucking.
But doesn't it feel so much longer than it is?
But that's a good thing.
It has a lot of substance to it for how short it is. That's what I love about it.
It's perfect.
It is. It really is.
It kills you 1,000 times before you even realize you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, pivotal to high energy music.
Yep. Okay, what is your favorite Anthrax album? Pick 3 if you must.
Favorite Anthrax album is probably Among the Living.
Yep.
That's I wish I had an answer that was maybe more nuanced or less obvious or not the sexy choice, because that's usually the one that people point to. But there's a reason why a lot of people point to that record. It's because it's fucking really, really good.
Yeah.
They had a moment right there. They had a moment where they nailed everything that they were going for at that point.
Yep.
I mean, they've got other great records as well too. I would say that they were probably pretty consistent from '83 to '93. They had a good 10-year run of some good records. Not all of them are amazing, but all of them are pretty fucking good. But for my money, none better than Among the Living.
Yep. So we've already talked a lot about Megadeth, but talk about your favorite Dave riffs that you'd consider to be pure thrash.
Take No Prisoners. That whole song, basically.
Oh, yeah, the verse riff. You talked about the verse riff before. That's right. The crazy fucking... Yeah. It was that song, right? With the Bananas verse riff?
The crazy verse riff is Poison Was the Cure. I would really say if you're going to look at classic, just blistering thrash Megadeth riffs, you're going to go with either Take No Prisoners, Poison Was the Cure, or the Black Friday portion of Good Morning Black Friday.
Yeah.
On Peace Cells.
Sure.
And maybe Bad Omen as well too. But I mean, those are the, I think of Megadeth and like their thrashier, more aggressive stuff, or Rattlehead on the debut, Killing Is My Business. Those are the ones that immediately, come to mind.
Right. With regard to the Canadian scene, talk about your favorite earlier thrash songs from Voivod, Anvil, Razor, Exciter, and Annihilator.
Alright, well, Voivod, I would say the song, again, calling them a thrash band is, to me, that's the tip of the iceberg, but...
No, I know.
Consider those first...
They've been so many things.
I mean, we talked about this at length before, but you could definitely link them to the thrash scene on those early records. But ironically enough, when I think of thrashy Voivod, I think of the song "Thrashing Rage" because it's just got a super cool. It's like just super really ominous and tough sounding riffing, Yep. And it's at that point on that record, on the Roar album, that's probably their most aggressive as far as them going for the thrash throat, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
So I guess I'll go with Thrashing Rage for Voivod. Anvil, they're probably more on the proto-thrash side of things.
Yes.
But
the beginning, right?
As far as songs that have influenced thrash, you're looking at a song like 666 on Metal album. And let's see, after that, you said Razor, right?
Yep.
Well, Razor is my favorite Canadian thrash band.
Yeah.
By far.
I didn't know that. I know that now.
Out as a thrash band, they kind of were more of a heavy metal band, but I think probably by the time they got to album 3 or 4, they were starting to kind of shed that heavy metal. They're starting to shed the heavy metal band that occasionally plays fast side of them, and were about to become just a pedal to the floor, we're a fucking thrash metal band. And I think that they really hit that stride where they just became a pure thrash band probably around either 87 or 88, Violent Restitution. That record is awesome. But I think that maybe their best album is Shotgun Justice, which is the next album that came out in 89 or 90. And that record is just so aggressive and so lyrically violent and irresponsible.
Irresponsible is a good word.
Yeah, they had lyrics. As far as I know, all the music and lyrics, well, I shouldn't say all the lyrics, but a vast majority of them were written by guitarist Dave Carlo. And some of them are so over the top, like violent and just like sociopathic that they're almost funny, but the singer on that album, Bob Reed, I think his name is, he delivers them in such a way that there's such a conviction to it, and the lyrics are so from the heart that it kind of kills the cheese factor that might exist if it was done by someone else. Like, song Stabbed in the Back. One of the lyrics is, all the bands I used to like are going down the drain. what the fuck has happened here? Have they gone insane? I used to think that heavy bands ignored the current trends, but once you've been in Rolling Stone, you learn about your friends.
Yeah.
That's almost deep. You know,
it is powerful. It's powerful.
You know. Yeah, and the rest of the record is about, like, you know, beating up promoters and, like,
yeah. like Dietzman and I have talked about that.
Like, there's songs about murdering people with a shotgun. There's songs about, you know, stabbing people to death. I mean, it's over the top aggressive in really almost every, you know, discernible metric. So, Shotgun Justice by Razor is just that's a classic. That's a favorite of mine for sure.
Right.
I encourage anyone to check out the Shotgun Justice album by Razor, because that is just blistering thrash metal.
Yeah.
It's a great time. It's a fucking great time. It still gets me pumped up after all these years.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's
fucking
good.
Awesome. Yeah. And did you say
Exciter?
Exciter?
Yeah.
Let's see. First three records, they were definitely kind of, you know, you could argue as to whether or not they were a thrash band or a speed metal band. There is kind of a difference, but I would think that they're so close. You know,
I thought they were right on the cusp.
Month or whatever is Kill 'Em All. So we'll just say that they're kind of early thrash, and you know, the first handful of records are great. They're almost like a more aggressive Motorhead. Like,
sure.
They took all Motorhead's, like, they got rid of the rock and roll stuff that Motorhead had and just concentrated on, like, the up-tempo Motorhead songs.
Yeah.
Decided, okay, well, we're going to go with this. You can't go wrong with, really, I would say specifically the first two records, Heavy Metal Maniac, and maybe even more so Violence and Force. Violence and Force is probably a little more aggressive.
Right. And Annihilator.
First two records. I mean, that band is just, I don't even know what happened to that band. They had, I mean, the first record is the best, Alice in Hell. That record is
Alice in Hell.
The best. It's got some of the best and cleanest picked and crispest, like, guitar riffing, like, ever. I mean, Jeff Waters is a sicko. And, you know, Never Neverland, the second album, you know, was kind of more of the same. It's just not better because it wasn't first. You know, it's the second record. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't think that opinion of mine is unique either. I think a lot of people think of them as at most a 2-album band. A lot of people probably
and they kind of fell off.
They're a 1-album wonder.
Right.
You know, I just don't know what happened. You know,
they're still highly regarded in that Canadian scene, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they haven't played in North America in, I don't think, over 20 years.
Right.
But, you know, I think Jeff Waters, I mean, he is, regardless of what I think of Annihilator's material, which, in all fairness, I have not heard all of their records.
Right.
But I generally check in on them on every record. You know, just because Jeff Waters is he's not even a good or a great guitarist. He's a phenomenal guitarist. I mean, he's a sicko. He's a fucking tremendous guitarist.
Right.
And so because I had that respect for him, I really kind of check out every record that they do. And I think my biggest problem is that I just don't really like the vocals that they have.
Oh, yeah.
And I know Jeff Walker does the vocals, which is vocals are more of I don't want to say they're more important, but when they're melodic and you're relying more on melody and tone, as opposed to, like, if it's more aggressive thrash metal, it's more barked or...
It's more about patterns, yeah.
You know, you don't need to have as a concern for tone or anything like that. And Annihilator's vocals, just, they never really... Even on... I don't know. They've never, ever been amazing. They've never had amazing vocals. And I think if you're going to be in a band that has clean vocals, they need to be pretty fucking good, you know?
Yes.
Especially when the music is that good. If the music is that good, then you have to...
You got to step up.
You have to have... Yes, it can't be lesser than. You know, if the music is a 10, you can't have the vocals coming in at a 6 or a 7, because then that pulls the overall product down to like an 8.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So, yeah, I've never really been too enamored or impressed with their singing.
Right. Metallica, Ride the Lightning, or Anthrax, Fistful of Metal?
Great question. I'll go with Ride the Lightning because I think it has the best sounding guitars on early Metallica.
Oh, I agree, absolutely.
Especially with the way that, like, the overall mix of that record, not so much the vocals. You know, Hetfield's still trying to, I think, figure himself out as a vocalist.
Sure.
On that.
No, but that mix is very ominous. It's a very dark, foreboding sounding album with a lot of reverbs in the lead guitars and such.
Yeah, and the riffs, like the rhythm guitars, they're way up in the mix.
Yep.
And they're much crunchier than the guitars on Kill 'Em All.
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, the thrash metal guitar tone, you know, that people kind of look to as the thrash metal tone, which is, you know, a lot of the scoop mids and, you know, chunkier style guitar tones. I think a lot of that stems from Ride the Lightning. You could say that, you know, as far as what people consider the thrash metal tone, you know, that's, if you're looking at James Hetfield, that's probably the album that started it.
Yep. The Hetfield downpick. Slayer, Hell Awaits, or Exodus, Bonded by Blood?
I prefer Bonded by Blood.
Yep. I just listened to that recently, too.
I mean, Hell Awaits has definitely sold more records, I'm sure.
Sure.
But as far as records from that period, I prefer Bonded by Blood over Hell Awaits. Though I do love Hell Awaits, but there's just something, there's a charm to Bonded by Blood.
Sure.
You know, it's got Paul Bailoff on it, and he's just a lunatic on that record, and other songs are about killing people and nuclear war and eating people and stabbing people and just, you know, just hyper violent and aggressive. And, you know, there's a song about piranhas, which is also,
right.
You know, if you're talking about Fish in a metal band, that's probably the most metal Fish.
Sure.
And in that song, Bailoff goes, I still get chills down my spine, and my arm hairs stand up when that part comes up, because he sounds completely unhinged.
Right. Yeah, unhinged is the perfect word.
He sounds completely unglued and insane, which from all the stories I've heard, he was insane. But yeah, when he screams an agonizing death in Piranha, I still feel that. And I'm 38 years old, and I'm just right now I'm talking about it in my arm here.
Yeah, it's touching you in that way, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Creator, Endless Pain, or Sepultura, Bestial Devastation?
Let's see. Well, I like Bestial Devastation more.
Yeah? Do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I don't think we've ever talked about Sepultura. Like, how do you feel about Sepultura in general?
I dig them up to Chaos AD.
Yep.
Up to and including Chaos AD.
Okay.
I feel like that was kind of a record that they really kind of carved out their own sound by that point.
Yep.
The records, the first record they had, they were like really good on, because obviously, Morbid Vision's really raw, primitive. There's fucking guitars out of tune and like.
Yeah.
You know, they're just kids going for it. And then you got Bestial Devastation. Actually, no, fuck. Bestial Devastation was first. That was the first EP. All right, so Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions. That's early stuff. You know, the kids are going for it.
They were almost intentionally bad. Were raw, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were doing what they know.
Yes.
And that's all they knew. And so that's what they were going for. So it was still very unrefined.
Yep.
But there's a charm to that, and it works. You know, the record to me that they were first really, really good on was Schizophrenia. And, you know, obviously at that point they got Andreas Kisser in the band, so that was a step up in the guitar department. You know, just everything about that was just much, much better. It was almost kind of a giant leap forward from the record before it. But then, you know, and so, you know, things really start to take form on Schizophrenia. Obviously, the very next record, Beneath the Remains, was another huge leap forward. And I think that at that point, they start probably, along with Schizophrenia, they've got, you know, a foothold in the more aggressive thrash scene. And at that point, they've got a foothold in what's becoming the death metal scene.
Yes.
You know, they're touring with bands like Sepultura and Obituary. And
Yeah.
They're touring with heavier bands. And, you know, they're recording their records with Scott Burns. And they're recording at Morrisound, you know, like on a rise. You know, but that being said, you know, they sounded, you could play me a lineup of bands from that era. And I could pick out Sepultura. A lot of it is just because of Max's voice. Max had an identifiable voice. Still does, I guess. But, like, it wasn't until they got into Chaos AD that I really think they kind of carved out a sound that was unique enough to where that record stands outside of their own discography. Like, you could hear what would go on to become, like, you know, hardcore, more modern 90s hardcore, like Hatebreed.
Yeah, the simpler,
Johnson,
chunky
stuff,
Chaos, yeah.
You know, and so you could hear, you know, they kind of, you know, they've got their influence really in three genres.
Yes,
thrash
they do.
Metal, death metal, and hardcore.
Yep.
So I think that, you know, I just think that era of the band, the 87 to 90. Well, a lot of people like Roots, but I don't like that album at all. To me, that was...
Yeah, I know. Roots is like everyone's touchstone for some reason.
To me, that was when they tried to get into their fourth genre, and it's the fucking wrong one to try and get an influence on, which is new metal.
The new metal period, yeah.
You can actually, you can say that Sepultura's got influences in 4 different genres.
They certainly do. A lot of new metal bands model after Sepultura, because Sepultura had those different chapters to them.
Yeah, and so I give them credit for trying to branch out, and they definitely did. You know, Roots was definitely kind of their own thing, but it's not a sound. It's got that bounce to it, you know. You know, the song Roots, Bloody Roots has that bounce, and I don't fucking like that at all. And, you know, so they've been influential in four metal subgenres, which, you know, I give them credit for. You're a special band if you can do that.
Yep.
I just don't like Roots. I
sure.
Really care for really much they've
or
done.
what they came into after that.
Yeah, to me, I don't really... I mean, they've had some stuff in the last decade and a half. It's been pretty cool and interesting to a degree, but I've never been a huge fan of Garrett Green's voice. You know, Max has just like a super pummeling, identifiable voice, and, yeah, I think that hurt Sepultura losing that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, they're important, definitely, to thrash metal. On the more extreme side of thrash metal, but, you know, thrash metal nonetheless.
Yep.
I kind of forget the original question, actually.
Oh, no, I was just... Well, I asked you to compare Endless Pain by Creator and Bestial Devastation, but then
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, then I remember that we had never talked about Sepultura before, so that was interesting. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so...
I'll go with Bestial Devastation. Endless Pain is cool.
Yep.
But the best Creator stuff was yet to come.
Yep. Metallica, Master of Puppets... Or Megadeth, Killing Is My Business?
Master of Puppets.
Really? I was very curious to know your answer to that. Because you are, like, usually in Megadeth's corner all the way, but...
I think Metallica's Master of Puppets is maybe the best heavy metal record just in general ever made. Because it covers so much ground. It's got...
I think you're right. It's very important.
Super thick. Yes, it's got the speed, it's got the heaviness, it's got the melody.
Yep.
It's got, epic song structure. I mean,
it's the whole package, and it was innovative for its time, and for that period, like it wasn't just a great record for heavy metal, but it was also important because of everything it laid the groundwork for.
And Killing Is My Business. I mean that's probably. I was talking to Rob Bork about this. I think that's probably like not even in my top 5 of Megadeth records.
Really?
My 6th or 7th favorite. I mean, I dig it. It's cool, but it to me is in no ways indicative of what their best stuff is. To me, Megadeth is kind of in respect a band like Dark Angel, to where they have a debut record, which is cool and it's important because it's the first one, but they really don't get cooking until album number 2. So, Killing Is My Business, I don't think is really a great representation of what. I wouldn't give someone that record if I had to sum up Megadeth in one album. I wouldn't give someone that record.
Sure.
I would give someone Master of Puppets if someone say, "What's Metallica all about?"
Yep.
Actually, that's not even true. I don't even know if that's true anymore. If they wanted to know what Metallica is all about, just encompassing, I would probably give them Hardwired, because that literally is the record that just sums up everything they've ever done.
Yeah, and it makes the most sense too, because at the end of their discography there, and it does touch on every Metallica era. That's true.
Yeah. But if someone wanted to say, well, as far as Metallica being a metal band is concerned,
yeah,
in the I guess more, for lack of a better term, orthodox sense of the word, I would give them Master of Puppets, just because it's probably the best metal record ever made.
Yeah, when I met Rob Steinwandel, I sat next to him in English class, and he was listening to Insane Clown Posse more than anything else, and I lent him Master of Puppets, and from what he has told me, that sent him on his journey. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I would like to have been responsible for that.
Well, I definitely know he was listening to a lot of ICP. I know at least that much is true.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. The second half of that, I wouldn't doubt either, because Bobby loves that record.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be. I mean, he's never told me that story, but we've never really talked about stuff like that before. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was 100% fact.
Right. What is your opinion of Death Angels, The Ultraviolence?
To me, it's the only record that they have that I really, really like.
Really?
I mean, they had
the debut,
had some cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just very, very aggressive, over the top, very, very exuberant, high energy thrash metal. And the fact that the average age of the band at that point was only like 17 years old. I think that the musicality is incredibly high. The musicality is better than some of the bands that were older than them. But I think the drummer on that record, Andy, was only like 16 years old, or 15 maybe even.
Mm-hmm. That's true for that time.
And just to kind of emphasize, like, how young they were at the time. Like, I saw them at the Cruise Inn.
Oh, wow.
They first got back together. I saw them at the Cruise Inn when they first got back together, which I think was 2003. I remember that because that was the first time I ever met Glenn Zemansky.
Oh, and nice.
I think, and again, just to show how young they were, I think that the drummer, and this was, bear in mind, their original drummer was still with them. This was their reunion tour. They hadn't been a band in 12 years, and and I think the drummer was still only like 29 years old.
Right.
So they had a reunion tour, a 12-year layoff, and then a reunion tour, and he was still either just barely 30 or not even 30 yet. These guys were all still in their early 30s by the time they got back together.
Right.
Crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I saw them at Montage Music Hall, but it would have been pretty recently.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel about Suicidal Tendencies? How Will I Laugh Tomorrow When I Can't Even Smile Today?
The song or the album?
The album.
Album's awesome.
Yeah.
And the song is probably one of my favorite songs in the history of music.
In the history of music, wow, good.
Yeah, I would say it's a top 30 all-time song of mine.
Wow.
Yeah. But the album's great. They kind of it's a transitional record. They were still, they were kind of coming out of the whole skate punk hardcore thing. But that's the first record they had.
That was kind of thrash.
That was definitely thrashy and more metallic, more importantly. Joined the Army, started to flirt with it, for sure. But they were still definitely kind of had that, they're still more of like a skate punk kind of thing on Join the Army. But you could say that the first record they did as like a metal band, quote for lack of a better word, was probably How Will I Laugh.
Yep.
And I think it's a great record. I love that album. It's awesome.
Yep. Awesome. Nuclear Assault or Violence?
Great question, because they're two bands that have really unique vocals.
Yes.
Got John Connolly, whose voice was super, super high, but it wasn't weak sounding, and it sounded super intense and pissed. And then you got Sean Killian of Violence, who no one has ever sounded like that, ever.
Right.
In music except for him. His vocals were even more unique to John Connolly.
I saw Violence for the first time in December. And it was in LA. It was at the Decibel Music Festival. And that was...
Oh, man, I would have loved to.
No, that was insane. That was my first experience with them at all. I don't think I had ever even heard them before. That was insane. Their energy is insane.
To see them first, because they had their songs, they were definitely at their best. They were a super intense band, and I've only ever seen them in video, from the old days. They had a documentary, and I have that, and I've only seen live videos of them from back in the day, and their shows look super intense. Crowds just...
No, the energy, I'd never seen energy like that in my life. That set a new standard.
Yeah, I would go with Violence over the two.
Right. Sodom or Sadis?
Sodom. Sadis, they're cool. To me, they're probably more of a death metal band.
Yeah, that's true.
Sadis is cool. They're super aggressive, but to me, they're just kind of known as the band that has really, really awesome... they're cool, but to me, they're Steve DiGiorgio's band.
Sure.
They're the thrashy death metal band that has, better bass playing than probably anyone.
Yeah,
cool,
right.
But
well, they have the fretless bass, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And their songs are so fast, they almost kind of lack identity. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So many of them are so fast and so intense.
There are no hooks.
There's just really not a lot of hooks, which is fine. I mean, extreme is cool and high tempo is fast, and I don't dislike them, but they've just never really done anything that's stuck with me,
Sure. Recommend some newer thrash bands not enough people are talking about.
Well, that's actually kind of, that's tough for me, because I'm not really into a lot of newer thrash. I'm into the spirit of it, but maybe not so much the delivery of it. I don't know why. I remember when the thrash, quote, thrash revival started, and it was either 04, 05, or 06. And, Municipal Waste is kind of the catalyst, or one of the catalysts for that. And a lot of the bands that followed in that wake were just mimicking the best 80s thrash, which is cool, and I would much rather hear that than like nu metal or metalcore or anything like that. But the problem with a lot of stuff that's just openly derivative or homage is that it just has me going back to listen to the bands that did it first.
Sure.
Yeah. The best newer thrash bands are the ones that give you the feeling of the classic bands, but they have a
original sound.
Or they have a zig or a zag somewhere else that makes it a little bit different. Like, and I'm not a really big fan of they call it pizza thrash. I'm not really into a big fan of the jokey kind of funny, thrash. Like, I'm not really into goofy thrash. I mean, if it's gonna have humor to it, the music better be savage, which is why I don't mind Municipal Waste. I think Municipal Waste is really good, but they're really cool. But when I think of newer thrash bands, I'm primarily thinking of the last 15 years, and I know they're kind of older than 15 years old. They started in 2001, I think. But for my money, the best 21st century thrash metal band is Ghoul. And they have a campy storyline, subplot, kind of a Gwarish kind of thing going on to a degree. But the music is great. And I think they're the best because they're the best. I said this to someone. I think they're the best 21st century thrash band because they don't really seem to have a lot of concern about sounding like a 20th century thrash band.
Yep.
They have those elements, but they
made it their own. They took those influences, made it their own. Yep.
Yeah, they have blast beats, which obviously thrash bands in the 80s weren't doing. They have some guttural vocals, which obviously thrash bands weren't doing in the 80s. To me, there's definitely a death metal tinge to it, but because the guitars, I think, are in standard tuning or close to it, and just there's a general jump to their sound, a bounciness that kind of has that thrash bounce to it, and just the type of riffing they do, I would definitely call them a thrash band before I would call them a death metal band.
Right.
And again, I just think that because they have the things that remind me of the best 80s and 90s thrash, early 90s thrash, but they don't just
mimic it, yeah,
and just flip riffs around, or you know what I'm saying? There's a twist to it. There's something that pushes it forward.
Yep.
And I dig that, and so I think that they're the best. Again, quote, newer thrash band. I mean, again, they've been a band for almost 20 years. But,
right.
I would say either them or Municipal Waste.
Sure. Talk about...
And Hell Cannon.
Hell Cannon, yes. How could we forget?
they're probably the best thrash band Buffalo's ever had.
Oh,
yeah. Them or Leviathan.
Sure.
The Barnes band.
The Barnes band, yep.
The 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But and honestly, the last Hell Cannon record, I think, kind of maybe, I don't know, it's kind of the same thing. It might even make me actually be a little more death metal than thrash metal. They kind of teeter on that ledge, kind of maybe the first Malevolent Creation album.
Yeah.
A little bit, Ten Commandments, or kind of teeters back and forth between death metal and thrash metal. But I think that's what kind of makes them cool. So
yeah.
Obviously, you gotta give a shout out. And Kane.
Yeah, Kane.
I forgot about Kane. Kane. was another band. I mean, you know, if you want to, they got more to it than just kind of just your token thrash. But if you're going to pigeonhole Kane into, someone had to say what kind of metal are they, I would say Kane's a thrash band.
No, Kane is I mean, I don't like using the word, but sometimes I'll say deafened thrash. But I mean, Kane is like, and what I guess my favorite thing about Kane is, like, for a 3-piece, they sound huge.
Exactly, and they were great. I think Kane was, you know, I missed that band.
Yep.
You know, they were a great band. I think that, you know, I like Hell Cannon a lot, but I think I like Kane even more, just because, you know, Erickson, especially on that last record they really channeled the Voivod spirit, you know, in aggressive addition to the kind of...
It was very sci-fi and mechanical sounding at times, like on Into Abyss, the song Cyberhumans. Cyberhumans has some really cool, like, higher register, like, triple harmonized stuff like that, like, for sure.
Yeah. So, I would say out of the newer thrash bands, I know, you know, maybe I'm a homer, but, you know, I do think that the bands we've had here in Buffalo that were playing that style were doing it in a way that was unique to me.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't even have mentioned their names.
Right. Yep.
You know?
Yep, friendships aside and all that, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk about your favorite thrash covers to play.
Favorite thrash covers to play.
Or whatever you've learned. Not even a cover you've performed, but whatever you've learned.
Just trying to think here. It's been a while since I just kind of sat down and cranked out thrash covers, but, you know, there's, you know, take your pick of any number of Hetfield riffs off the first 3 or 4 Metallica records. Those are always fun. Those are always really, really good workouts and exercises for the right hand.
Yep.
No doubt about it. No one riffs like that. I think even Dimebag Darrell once said, you know, eventually you play so fast, you have to start alternate picking unless you're James Hetfield.
Yes.
You know, like, he's just the master of the downstrokes, the down picking, and that kind of stutter, like, he's the master of that. He just has something that was just, you know, there's something in his wrist that just none of the rest of us have, really. You know?
Yeah.
So, old school Hetfield riffs are really good to kind of remind you of how you need to practice more.
Yep.
You need to practice that right hand more. So those are always fun. I had a lot of fun, especially growing up when I was learning how to play. I had a lot of fun jamming stuff off of the Fabulous Disaster album by Exodus. There's some really cool riffs, like in the title track and in Last Act of Defiance. There's Verbal Razors. There's some really cool riffs on that record. Really, on the first 3 Exodus records, there's a lot of cool riffs. Kind of like the same with Metallica. Just a lot of classic thrash riffing on those first few records. And, you know, some Slayer stuff, some Anthrax stuff, some Testament stuff. You know, and that's really, I'm trying to think, do I know any other thrash riffs? No, I think as far as me learning thrash songs, I think I'm fairly orthodox.
Right.
You know, it's not like I know, you know, I kind of think I might have known, what is the name of that song? Give me 1 second here. Older Than Time Itself by Dark Angel.
Oh, there you go.
Knew that a little bit.
Yeah, I met the guitarist in October at a punk bar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with Jim Durkin?
Yeah, that was wild. It was a punk bar at Sunset and Highland. It was crazy.
Okay. Yeah, he was like, him and Gene Hoglan were like the architects of those, the best Dark Angel stuff, which is, you know, the first really records 2, 3, and 4, you know, the last 3 albums I mean, Durkin wrote a lot on. I mean, he was like the main guitarist on the first 3 records. You know, so a lot of that band, a lot of their best stuff was probably written by Jim Durkin, and then after he left, Hoagland kind of took over and wrote a lot of that music. But yeah, some of the riffing Jim Durkin did, specifically on the Leave Scars album, is just absolutely bonkers, to the point of, like, ridiculous. Like, how could you even think to play something like this at that speed?
Right.
You know, there's things on that record where it sounds like they're about to derail and just kind of fall apart, like the whole car's going to explode. You know, but they found they would, because you'll listen to them and think, good God, this is just, this riff is so fast. And if you know about playing guitar, I mean, you kind of get the idea of, you know, the mechanics of what they're having to do and how they're having to play between, you know, their right and left hand to make these riffs work. And I always think about, like, myself trying to play that, and I think, holy fuck, I'd be holding on for dear life. You know? Like,
right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Some of the, you know, Jim Durkin is the architect of a lot of those Dark Angel riffs on Leave Scars, where it just, like, kind of just hold on, and it's kind of even tough to breathe while you're listening to it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least, make your own Big Four.
That question sucks. That's... Man. That's tough. This is a really hard question, man. Because it's the only reason why the Big Four is called the Big Four is because they were the biggest.
Yes.
You know, it has nothing to do with, you know,
personal opinion. It's about sales.
I mean, they're called the Big Four. There's nothing intangible about that statement. It's strictly tangible,
based on album sales, right?
Based on album sales. So I mean, for me personally, come up with my own personal Big Four. Obviously, it's not. It can't just gonna be more artistically chosen, because I can't just come up with my own Big Four based on album sales, because there's already that exists. So, fuck. Alright, well, I guess I'll have to come up with something here and then fucking live to regret it and change my mind next time someone asks me this question ever again. But, I mean, fuck. In the interest of spreading it out, maybe country-wise, I'll go with go with Metallica, Razor, Creator, and Exodus.
Not Testament?
Now I'll go with Exodus.
Okay. Very interesting Big Four.
That's the problem. Like, I could have fucking pieced any one of these bands. Not any one of these bands, but there's a handful of bands I could have put in there. But I just feel like Exodus, you know, they kind of get left out of the conversation, and they were really in it on the ground floor.
Yeah.
You know, they formed, you know, the same year or the year before Metallica did. You know, and so they kind of get left out of the, I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but when I was getting into Exodus, I mean, people, unless you were still into thrash, people had by and large stopped talking about them.
Yep.
I mean, their comeback is probably one of the better ones in music history. It's definitely in metal history, because they're not just a reunion band. They're not just like a kind of special occasion band that just comes out and does weekends or plays festivals only. Like, they're a band. They're a band. Like, they do album tour. So I feel like they've always been kind of slighted on the accolades that they've deserved. And I'm hoping that, maybe Gary Holt playing in Slayer for the last 8 years.
That's right. Yep.
Maybe we'll get some more eyes and ears on Exodus going forward. So, I guess I'll have to go with that.
Awesome.
I'm really happy about having to make this decision, because, I could swap all 4 of those bands out for 4 more bands that I feel are as worthy, but, you're going to pin me in a corner. I'm going to have to do something, so there you go.
Well, when we come back next week, you can change your answer. Because what I can do is I can ask you this question once a week.
Okay.
All
right.
Okay, so did you have anything to add? Like, was there something you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
The genre is incredibly important to me. It's really the first kind of, I guess, extreme music I ever really listened to. It had a huge impact on my guitar playing.
Yep.
And some of my favorite records of all time in music were by thrash bands. I would say that it's a style of music that was not really getting a lot of love anymore when I got into it. And I'm glad to see that, time has been kind to the genre.
Yes.
And although I didn't particularly care for the way a lot of the newer thrash bands presented their material or put it together or whatever, when the thrash revival started 15 years ago or 16 years ago, I was very, very excited to see if the content wasn't what I was liking. I was very, very happy to see that the spirit and the intent was not only alive again, but alive, in a strong way. And it's the next generation got it, and they're going to carry it forward.
Yep.
A band like Havoc, they're one of the better newer thrash bands, and
right.
A whole new era of kids are getting into those old records because of those bands.
Oh, I think I saw Havoc at the Penny Arcade. Maybe. I know I've seen them at least once.
I know they played Diablo one time.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Played Diablo, and I think they also played at Broadway Joe's.
Probably.
The very beginning, I think maybe on the tour for their first record or something.
Sure. Well,
but yeah, dude, it's a genre of music that is super important. It's it's a gateway. If you want it to be, it's a gateway to heavier pastures. But even if that's as far as you want it to go,
that's still pretty fucking far.
that's still pretty. There's several onions. There's several layers to the thrash metal onion.
Yep.
It's great that you can listen to Metallica. You can listen to a song like Battery or Damage Incorporated, and that's a thrash metal song. In the same respect, you could listen to, Christ Passion by Sodom, Pleasure to Kill by Creator, The Burning of Sodom by Dark Angel. You could, and then just crazy weirdo stuff like, the Punishment for Decadence album by Coroner. I mean, you got techie thrash bands. You got, Christian thrash bands like Believer, which is some super psychotic sounding stuff. heavier than some satanic death metal, you know, and just
Yep.
thrash is it's a much more diverse, wider web than a lot of people will probably
Give it
ever
credit
get
for,
credit
yeah.
for, unless you're a fan of the genre. Thrash means, it doesn't mean one thing. It means several things, but they're all connected in some way, and you can
Mostly
make
with
that all
tempo.
make sense. Yeah, tempo has a lot to do with it. I mean, if you play slow, you're not a thrash band. You know?
Yeah.
You know, velocity and tempo has a lot to do with it. But even if you want to look at it from a surface level, you could say, okay, yeah, the velocity and tempo connects it all. But if you want to get deeper into it, there's, you know, aesthetics, you know, beyond that connects all these bands as well too. There is something. There's an energy. There's an X factor that links it all. You know, again, if you're not a fan of the genre, you're going to hear a song like Damage Incorporated, and you're going to hear a song like Sanity Obscure by Believer. And one is definitely much more intense than the other. You know, maybe that's a bad example, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you like the genre, if you know the music, you can connect the two, and it makes sense, and it's all good because it's all fucking great.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great closing line. It's all good because it's all fucking great.
Yeah, it makes sense maybe somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're doing death metal next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. This was enjoyable.
Fuck yeah, dude.
All right.
Hell yeah.
Until next week, sir.
Until next week, sir.
All right.
Have an excellent evening.
You too, man. See ya.
Peace. All right, bye.